Take control today. Your cravings are controlling your future. Master your mind, conquer your habits, and build the healthier, stronger life you've been waiting for. The Secret to Self-Control, Mastering Your Cravings and Living a Healthier Life. Written by Magnus Draykart and published by Listen Grow Sleep. Before we dive in, take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe, but only if you genuinely love the books I publish here. Drop a comment below letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always so cool to see where people are watching from. Now listen, grow, and hopefully you fall asleep. Chapter 1. The Lessons That Shaped My Understanding. My name is Dr. Magnus Draykart, and I want to tell you about two people who fundamentally shaped how I understand the power of human transformation and the science of self-control. Let me start with my mother. When I was born, my mother was 42 years old, and something remarkable happened. For the first time in her entire life, she decided to start exercising. It began simply enough. She started by walking around our neighborhood block, just once around at first, huffing and puffing by the time she made it back to our front door. But my mother had something that I didn't fully appreciate until years later, an unshakable belief that it's never too late to change your life. Within a few months, that single walk around the block became a daily routine. Then she started jogging parts of it. Before long, she was running the entire loop without stopping. That's when she discovered 5K races. I remember the first one she entered. She was so nervous the night before, laying out her clothes, checking and rechecking the race route. But she finished that race with a smile so wide it could have lit up the entire city. That 5K became a 10K. The 10K became a half marathon. And then, to everyone's amazement, including her own, my mother ran a full marathon. But she didn't stop there. At age 55, my mother completed her first triathlon, swimming, biking, and running, one after the other. I watched from the sidelines as this woman who had never been athletic in her life crossed that finish line with tears streaming down her face. And then came the moment that still takes my breath away. When my mother was 57 years old, she called me with an announcement that left me speechless. She was going to trek to the base camp of Mount Everest, not to climb the mountain itself, but to hike for weeks through some of the most challenging terrain on Earth, at altitudes that would leave most people gasping for air. I thought she was joking, but 6 months later, I was looking at photos of my mother standing at Everest Base Camp, 17,600 feet above sea level, grinning like she had just conquered the world. In many ways, she had. Now let me tell you about my father. If my mother taught me about the power of physical transformation, my father taught me about the power of knowledge and scientific thinking. When I was a child, my father would take me to science museums and planetariums. He would patiently explain how things worked, always encouraging me to ask questions and think critically about the world around me. When I reached high school, my father became my calculus teacher. I wanted to crawl under my desk every time he called on me in class. There's nothing quite like having your dad as your teacher to make you feel like every eye in the classroom is watching your every move. But looking back, I realize how fortunate I was to have someone who could show me the beauty and precision of mathematical thinking. From my mother, I learned the value of health and the incredible capacity humans have for transformation, no matter what age they start. From my father, I learned the value of science and evidence-based thinking. These two values have guided me throughout my career and have helped me understand one of the most pressing challenges of our time. We are facing an epidemic, and it's not the kind that makes headlines or causes governments to declare states of emergency. It's the epidemic of unhealthy living, and it's killing more people than most of us realize. Consider these sobering statistics. 500 million people worldwide are obese. Despite 50 years of public health campaigns and countless warnings about the dangers of tobacco, 1 billion people worldwide still use tobacco products. Tobacco use and obesity are two of the most preventable causes of premature death on our planet. You would think that with all our medical knowledge, all our understanding of nutrition and exercise, all our awareness of the health risks, we would have solved these problems by now. But we haven't. In fact, in many parts of the world, these problems are getting worse, not better. Why is this happening? Why do intelligent, educated people continue to engage in behaviors they know are harmful to their health? Why do people who desperately want to quit smoking continue to light up cigarette after cigarette? Why do people who genuinely want to lose weight find themselves reaching for unhealthy foods again and again? The answer is complex, like trying to solve a massive jigsaw puzzle with pieces scattered across multiple tables. We engage in unhealthy behaviors because of our genetics, because of brain chemistry and neurotransmitters, because of environmental influences like our social circles and media exposure. Each of these pieces represents factors that are largely beyond our individual control. But there's one piece of this puzzle that might hold the key to everything else. It's the piece that you and I can actually influence directly. It's our choices about what we do with our cravings to engage in behaviors like smoking, overeating, or other habits that don't serve our long-term health and happiness. Our choices, that's where the power lies. There's a new science emerging around self-control that offers hope for reversing these epidemics of unhealthy living. It's not what you might expect. It's not about willpower in the traditional sense. It's not about gritting your teeth and powering through your cravings. It's not about distraction techniques or avoidance strategies. Instead, it's about something called willingness. And willingness might just be the key to unlocking a healthier, more fulfilling life for millions of people around the world. Willingness means allowing your cravings to come and go while not acting on them. It means making peace with the uncomfortable sensations and thoughts that arise when you want to smoke a cigarette, or eat that piece of cake, or engage in any behavior that doesn't align with your long-term goals. I know this might sound counterintuitive. You might be thinking, wait a minute, doctor. Rodriguez, are you telling me that the secret to self-control is to not try to control my cravings? And my answer is, exactly. But before you dismiss this as some kind of new age nonsense, let me tell you how I discovered this approach and why the science behind it is so compelling. Several years ago, a colleague of mine approached me with a book about willingness and acceptance-based approaches to behavior change. He was practically bouncing with excitement as he handed it to me. Magnus, he said, this book is going to revolutionize how we think about helping people change their lives. I'll be honest with you, I was skeptical. I flipped through the pages, read a few chapters, and thought, this sounds like a bunch of psychological mumbo-jumbo. I set the book aside and went back to my traditional research on behavior change. But my colleague was persistent. A few months later, he invited me to attend a workshop on acceptance and commitment therapy at the University of Washington. I almost didn't go. I had a dozen other things I could have been doing that weekend, but something made me show up. That workshop changed everything for me. I was absolutely blown away by what I learned. The science was solid, the results were impressive, and the approach made sense in a way that traditional willpower-based methods never had. I went home and read that book my colleague had given me. Then I read another book on the topic, and another. I sought out training in these methods. I began incorporating them into my research. And what I discovered was that willingness is part of a broader therapeutic approach called acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT for short. This approach is being used successfully to help people with anxiety disorders, depression, chronic pain, and yes, addictions. Some innovative companies are even using these principles to help their employees perform better and experience less stress at work. The more I learned about this approach, the more I realized how different it was from everything I had been taught about behavior change. In my research world, the standard approach to helping people quit smoking or lose weight was to teach them to avoid their cravings. Don't think about cigarettes. Distract yourself when you want to eat something unhealthy. Turn off those uncomfortable feelings like you're flipping a light switch. But what if that approach is fundamentally flawed? What if trying to turn off our cravings actually makes them stronger? What if the very act of fighting against our desires gives them more power over us? That's exactly what the research on willingness suggests. And in the chapters that follow, I'm going to share with you the science behind this revolutionary approach to self-control, along with practical strategies you can use to master your cravings and create lasting change in your life. The journey my mother took from being sedentary at 42 to trekking to Everest Base Camp at 57 didn't happen because she had superhuman willpower. It happened because she learned to work with her mind and body in a completely different way. She learned to accept the discomfort of exercise, to make peace with the voice in her head that said, "This is too hard," and to keep moving forward anyway. That's the power of willingness, and it's available to every single one of us. Chapter 2. The futility of fighting your cravings. There's a song from a Broadway musical that perfectly captures how most of us have been taught to deal with uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. The lyrics go something like this. When you start to get confused because of thoughts in your head, don't feel those feelings. Hold them in instead. Turn it off like a light switch. Just go click. We do it all the time when you're feeling certain feelings that just don't seem right. Treat those pesky feelings like a reading light and turn them off. We live in a world where the message we constantly hear is, turn off the bad feelings. Don't feel sad, don't feel anxious, don't feel angry, and certainly don't feel those cravings for cigarettes, junk food, or whatever else you're trying to avoid. But here's the problem with this approach. It doesn't work. In fact, it often makes things worse. Let me demonstrate this with a simple exercise. I want you to imagine that you're walking into a bakery. The smell of fresh-baked chocolate chip cookies fills the air. They just came out of the oven, and they're still warm. You can see the chocolate chips glistening, and the aroma is absolutely intoxicating. Feel that craving to eat one of those cookies. Really let yourself experience that desire. Now turn it off. Stop wanting those cookies. Don't think about how delicious they would taste. Don't imagine biting into that warm, gooey chocolate. Just turn off that craving like you're flipping a light switch. How's that working for you? If you're like most people, trying to turn off the craving probably made you want those cookies even more. You can see the futility of trying to simply shut down your desires. You can't just turn them off, no matter how hard you try. And maybe you don't have to. Maybe you can leave the light on and still make choices that align with your goals and values. This realization led me to completely rethink how we approach behavior change. At my research lab at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center here in Seattle, we've been conducting randomized clinical trials to test whether teaching people to be willing to have their cravings is more effective than teaching them to avoid or suppress those cravings. We've tested this approach in face-to-face counseling sessions, through telephone quit lines, on websites, and in smartphone apps. These technologies have the potential to reach millions of people with interventions that could literally save their lives. And the results have been remarkable. When we pool together the data from 6 published clinical trials, including studies conducted by our colleagues at other institutions, we see something extraordinary. For people who were taught the traditional avoidance approach, trying to distract themselves from cravings or avoid thinking about smoking, some of them successfully quit. The success rates varied depending on the specific study, but for people who were randomly assigned to learn the willingness approach, twice as many quit smoking successfully. Twice as many. That's not a small improvement. That's a game changer. Of course, statistics only tell us part of the story. To really understand how willingness works in practice, let me share with you the experiences I've had counseling people who want to quit smoking. I'll weave together several real cases and present them as one person we'll call Maria. Maria was a 45-year-old woman who had been smoking since she was a teenager. Like many people who come to me for help, she had tried to quit multiple times before without success. She was deeply skeptical that anything new was going to help her, but she was also desperately hopeful that this time would be different. The first thing I taught Maria was to become aware of her cravings in her body. I asked her to notice where she felt the urge to smoke. Was it in her chest, her throat, her hands? I had her keep a journal, tracking the intensity of her cravings over time and noting whether she smoked afterward. In the middle of my explanation, Maria stopped me. "What are you talking about?" she said. "I don't have cravings. I just smoke." This is actually very common. Many people who smoke have been doing it for so long that they've become completely unconscious of the process. They wake up in the morning and smoke a cigarette. They have a cup of coffee and smoke a cigarette. They get in the car and smoke a cigarette. They're living on autopilot, not aware of what they think or feel before they act. I told Maria, "Why don't you try tracking your cravings for a week and we'll see what happens. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else." She came back the following week with a look of frustration on her face. "You know what? she said. "I've been tracking my cravings like you asked, and now I can't stop thinking about smoking. What am I supposed to do?" This is actually a sign that the process is working. Maria was becoming conscious of something that had been happening automatically for decades. She was waking up from autopilot and becoming aware of her internal experience. But awareness alone isn't enough. The next step was to teach Maria how to relate to her thoughts and cravings differently. I introduced her to an exercise called I Am Having the Thought. One of Maria's most common thoughts before smoking was, "I'm feeling really stressed right now. I need a cigarette to calm down." This thought felt absolutely true to her. It felt like a fact, not just a thought. I asked Maria to add the phrase, "I am having the thought," to the beginning of that sentence. So instead of, "I'm feeling really stressed right now, I need a cigarette," she would say, "I'm having the thought that I'm feeling really stressed right now and I need a cigarette." Then I asked her to add another phrase, "I noticed that I am having the thought." So the full sentence became, "I notice that I am having the thought that I'm feeling really stressed right now and I need a cigarette." This might seem like a small change, but it's actually profound. What this exercise does is create a little bit of space between Maria and her thoughts. It helps her recognize that thoughts are just thoughts, not necessarily facts or commands that must be obeyed. We can all do this exercise with any negative or unhelpful thought. For example, if I have the thought, "I'm boring everyone with this explanation," I can step back and say, "I notice that I'm having the thought that I'm boring everyone with this explanation." This creates just enough space for me to choose how to respond, rather than being automatically controlled by the thought. The fact is, we don't act on every thought we have, and that's a good thing. If we did, we'd all be in a whole lot of trouble. We have thousands of thoughts every day, and most of them don't require any action at all. This technique was helpful for Maria, but there was another challenge she faced that required a different approach. Maria felt tremendous shame about being a smoker. She was embarrassed when people saw her smoking outside buildings. Her husband frequently criticized her for continuing to smoke. She had developed a deep self-loathing about her habit. Ironically, Maria often dealt with this shame by having a cigarette, which provided temporary relief until the shame came flooding back even stronger than before. She was caught in a vicious cycle where the very behavior she was ashamed of became her way of coping with that shame. I asked Maria, what would it be like if we tried to honor this feeling of shame as part of the human experience? If you had a close friend who was feeling shame about smoking, what words of caring and kindness would you offer to that friend? And could you then offer those same words to yourself? Maria looked up at me with surprise. For just a moment, I could see the harsh self-criticism soften in her eyes. She had never considered treating herself with the same compassion she would naturally offer to a friend facing the same struggle. This shift in self-compassion made it just a little bit easier for Maria not to act on her cravings the next time they arose. When shame came up, instead of immediately reaching for a cigarette, she could pause and offer herself some kindness. This didn't make the shame disappear, but it made it more bearable. What Maria was learning, and what I want you to understand, is that the secret to self-control is actually to give up control. This sounds paradoxical, but bear with me. When we try to control our cravings through willpower and suppression, we end up in what I call a tug-of-war with a craving monster. The craving monster says, "Come on, have that cigarette. Come on, eat that cookie. You know you want it." And you're on the other side saying, "No, craving monster. I'm going to distract myself from you. I'm going to ignore you. No, no, no." The craving monster pulls harder. "Come on, you know you want it. Just this once." And you pull back. "No, I have willpower. I can resist." Back and forth you go, and pretty soon the craving monster overpowers you. You have that cigarette or eat that cookie, and then you feel guilty and defeated. But here's the thing. You don't have to engage in this tug-of-war at all. You can simply drop the rope. When you drop the rope, something interesting happens. You discover that if you just allow the craving monster to be there, to occupy a space in your body without fighting it, the monster isn't as threatening as it appeared. In fact, most cravings, if you simply observe them without acting on them, will pass on their own within a few minutes. This doesn't mean the cravings become pleasant or that you start enjoying them. It means you learn that you can experience uncomfortable sensations and thoughts without being controlled by them. You can feel the urge to smoke and choose not to smoke. You can want that cookie and decide not to eat it. This is the essence of willingness, allowing your internal experience to be what it is, while choosing your actions based on your values and long-term goals, rather than your momentary impulses. In our next chapter, we'll explore exactly how to develop the skill of willingness and how to apply it to whatever cravings or impulses you're struggling with in your own life. Chapter 3. The Science and Practice of Willingness. Now that you understand why fighting your cravings doesn't work, let's explore what willingness actually looks like in practice and the science that makes it so effective. Willingness is part of acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, which has been extensively researched for treating anxiety, depression, chronic pain, and addiction. The core insight is that psychological suffering often comes not from difficult thoughts and feelings themselves, but from our attempts to avoid, suppress, or control them. Willingness offers a different path. Instead of trying to eliminate uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, you open up to them, make space for them, and learn to coexist with them while still pursuing your values and goals. Willingness is not passive resignation. It's an active choice to relate to your internal experience differently. It's a skill that can be developed and strengthened over time. Let me share specific techniques to help you develop willingness, starting with body awareness practices. The first step is learning to notice what's happening in your body when cravings arise. Most of us miss the early warning signs of cravings and impulses because we're disconnected from our physical sensations. Try this now. Close your eyes, take a slow breath, and scan your body from head to toes. Notice any tension, warmth, coolness, or tingling. Don't try to change anything, just observe. This body awareness is crucial because cravings aren't just thoughts, they're physical experiences. When you want a cigarette, you might feel chest tension or restless energy in your hands. When you crave sugar, you might notice a hollow stomach feeling or throat urgency. By recognizing these sensations, you can catch cravings early, before they build overwhelming momentum. You can say, "Oh, I noticed that familiar chest tension. That's my cigarette craving arising." This recognition creates space between you and the craving. The second technique is the RAIN approach: recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture. Recognize means simply noticing what's happening without judgment. I'm having a chocolate craving, or I'm feeling anxious. Allow means making space for the experience without trying to change it. This craving is here, and that's okay. I don't have to like it, but I can allow it to be present. Investigate means getting curious. What does this craving feel like in your body? Where do you notice it most? How does it change over time? Approach your experience with scientific curiosity rather than critical judgment. Nurture means offering yourself compassion. Having cravings doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Place a hand on your heart and offer yourself the same kindness you'd give a struggling friend. Let me tell you how Maria used RAIN with her smoking cravings. After a stressful work meeting, she felt the familiar urge for a cigarette. Instead of automatically lighting up, she practiced RAIN. She recognized, "I'm having a strong smoking craving right now," noticing the shoulder tension and restless hands. She allowed, "This craving is here, and I don't have to fight it. I can let it be present without acting on it." She investigated. "This feels like a tight chest band with buzzing energy in my arms. It's intense but not dangerous. Just a sensation." She nurtured. "This is difficult, and it's understandable I want relief. I'm doing my best and can be kind to myself." After 5 minutes of RAIN, the craving's intensity decreased. It didn't disappear completely, but became manageable. Maria drove home without smoking, feeling proud for the first time in years. This taught Maria that cravings are temporary. They arise, peak, and naturally subside if we don't feed them with actions. Like ocean waves, they build up, crest, and fall back down. Another powerful technique is values clarification. When you're in a strong cravings grip, it's easy to lose sight of your bigger picture. But when connected to your deeper values, you have an anchor during challenging moments. Maria identified her key values: being a good role model for her teenage daughter, maintaining health for active aging, and living with integrity. When cravings arose, she'd ask, "If I smoke this cigarette, will that move me closer to or further from being who I want to be?" This wasn't about guilt. It was about clarity and choice. Values clarification shifts your focus from what you're avoiding, craving discomfort, to what you're creating, a life aligned with your deepest values. The third component is cognitive diffusion, changing your relationship with thoughts so they have less control over your behavior. We tend to treat thoughts as absolute truths or commands that must be obeyed. Diffusion techniques help you see thoughts as just thoughts, mental events that come and go like clouds. One simple technique is adding, "I'm having the thought that," before problematic thoughts. Instead of, "I need a cigarette," say, "I'm having the thought that I need a cigarette." This creates psychological distance. You can also imagine thoughts as leaves floating down a stream, observing them without grabbing on or being carried away. The fourth component is urge surfing, learning to ride out cravings like a surfer rides a wave, staying balanced without being knocked over. When a craving arises, imagine yourself as a surfer. The craving is a building wave. Your job isn't to stop it or be overwhelmed, but to stay balanced as it builds, crests, and subsides. During urge surfing, pay close attention to the craving's physical sensations. Notice how it starts, builds in intensity, and naturally decreases if you don't act. Most cravings peak and subside within 3 to 5 minutes if you simply observe without acting. Maria practiced urge surfing regularly. She'd set a 5-minute timer when strong cravings arose, committing to surf the urge before making smoking decisions. Usually, by timer's end, the craving had significantly decreased. The final component is self-compassion. This might be most important because without it, other techniques can become another way to be hard on yourself. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a struggling friend. When Maria occasionally smoked, instead of berating herself, she'd practice self-compassion, acknowledging that quitting is difficult, setbacks are normal, and she could learn and get back on track. Research shows that people who practice self-compassion are more resilient, motivated to change, and likely to maintain healthy behaviors. Being kind to yourself when you struggle actually makes you stronger, not weaker. Remember, willingness is a skill, not a personality trait. Like any skill, it gets stronger with practice. Start with one technique that resonates with you, practice regularly, and gradually add others. The goal is progress, not perfection, a different relationship with cravings, not their elimination. The secret to self-control is not more control, but willingness to experience your internal world fully while choosing actions based on what matters most to you. This is the path to lasting change and genuine freedom. Chapter 4. Applying willingness to food cravings and emotional eating. Food cravings present a unique challenge because we can't simply abstain from food entirely. We must develop a healthy relationship with food that allows us to nourish our bodies without being controlled by every impulse. Let me tell you about Carlos, a 38-year-old accountant who struggled with emotional eating. Despite knowing everything about nutrition, Carlos found himself eating ice cream straight from the container after stressful days, often without remembering the decision. "Dr. Rodriguez," Carlos told me, "I know what I should eat, but when I'm exhausted and overwhelmed, all that knowledge disappears. I find myself standing in front of the refrigerator and I don't even know how I got there." When we eat in response to emotions rather than physical hunger, we're using food as a drug to change how we feel. The willingness approach involves learning to experience triggering emotions without automatically reaching for food. I had Carlos keep an emotion and eating log for 1 week, writing down what he felt before, during, and after eating. This revealed he rarely ate when physically hungry. Instead, he ate when anxious, lonely, bored, or frustrated. The first technique was distinguishing between physical hunger and emotional hunger. Physical hunger develops gradually and can be satisfied with various foods. Emotional hunger comes suddenly, craves specific foods, and doesn't stop when physically satisfied. I taught Carlos to pause before eating and ask, am I physically hungry right now, or am I trying to feed an emotion? This created space between impulse and action. When Carlos identified emotional hunger, we practiced rain. One evening after a stressful day, instead of heading to the kitchen, he practiced recognize. I'm feeling stressed and have the urge to eat something to feel better. Allow. This stress is uncomfortable, but I can let these feelings be present without feeding them. Investigate. This stress feels like a tight knot in my stomach. The urge to eat feels like restless energy. Nurture. It makes sense that I want comfort after a difficult day. I can be kind to myself while working through this. After 10 minutes, both stress and food craving decreased. Carlos realized he could experience stress without needing to eat to cope. We developed alternative comfort strategies since Carlos had been using food as his primary coping mechanism. We created a list, taking walks, listening to music, calling friends, or practicing deep breathing. A powerful shift came when Carlos learned to view food cravings as information rather than commands. Instead of, I need chocolate cake, he'd think, I'm craving chocolate cake. What might this tell me about what I need? Sometimes cravings indicated physical hunger. Sometimes tiredness needing rest, or loneliness needing connection. By listening to the information behind cravings, Carlos could address actual needs. Carlos also learned conscious indulgence. When choosing to eat purely for pleasure, he did so consciously and without guilt, savoring the experience fully. This reduced overall consumption because he got more satisfaction from smaller amounts. The transformation took months, but changes were profound. Carlos lost weight naturally and developed food freedom he'd never experienced. The biggest change, Carlos told me, isn't just that I eat less junk food, it's that I feel like I have a choice. When I want to eat something, I can pause and ask myself what I really need. Either way, it feels like my decision rather than something happening to me. This sense of choice and agency is at the heart of the willingness approach to food cravings. It's about developing awareness and skills to make conscious choices about food rather than being driven by unconscious patterns. Chapter 5. Breaking free from modern addictions. In our hyper-connected world, we face new behavioral challenges that previous generations never had to navigate. I call these modern addictions: compulsive social media scrolling, endless online shopping, binge watching, and constantly checking devices. These behaviors can be just as disruptive to our well-being as traditional addictions. Let me tell you about Sophia, a 29-year-old marketing professional who felt controlled by her smartphone. Dr. Rodriguez, she said, I pick up my phone to check the time, and 3 hours later, I'm still scrolling. I've missed dinners with friends and can't watch a movie without checking my phone every few minutes. Research shows the average person checks their phone over 150 times per day. What makes these addictions challenging is that they're designed to be addictive. Technology companies use neuroscience to create apps that capture our attention through variable rewards, social validation, and fear of missing out. These notifications and endless content trigger the same dopamine pathways as gambling and drugs. We're essentially carrying slot machines in our pockets, pulling the lever hundreds of times daily. Just like with food cravings, the solution isn't willpower alone. We need to apply willingness principles to these modern challenges. I started by having Sophia track her phone usage for 1 week. Every time she picked up her phone, she noted what she was feeling and what she hoped to get from the interaction. This revealed that she rarely used her phone for specific tasks. Instead, she reached for it when bored, anxious, lonely, or avoiding something difficult. I realized I was using my phone like a pacifier, Sophia told me. Whenever I felt uncomfortable, I would automatically reach for it, but it never actually made me feel better. It just postponed dealing with whatever I was feeling. I taught Sophia the stop technique. When she felt the urge to check her phone, S, stop what she was doing. Take a breath. O, observe what she was feeling. Proceed with intention. This created conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Often, Sophia discovered she needed connection, rest, or simply the ability to tolerate boredom, not digital distraction. We also applied the RAIN technique to technology cravings. Recognize, I'm having a strong urge to check Instagram. Allow, this urge is here and I don't have to act on it immediately. Investigate, this feels like restless energy in my hands and mental itch. Nurture, it's understandable that I want to feel better when anxious. Sophia practiced urge surfing by setting a 5-minute timer when feeling strong urges to use her phone unnecessarily. She would observe how the urge felt and changed over time. Usually by the timer's end, the urge had significantly decreased. It was amazing to discover these urges have a natural lifespan, Sophia said. I thought if I didn't check immediately, the urge would become unbearable, but they actually peak and fade on their own. We also worked on environmental design. Remember, environment trumps willpower. Sophia turned off non-essential notifications, moved social media apps off her home screen, and created phone-free zones. She established specific times for checking email and social media. When Sophia chose to use social media, she did so mindfully, setting time limits and paying attention to how content made her feel. This helped her get more satisfaction from less screen time. I also worked with David, who struggled with online shopping impulses. He would browse shopping websites when stressed or lonely, spending hundreds on things he didn't need. We applied the same willingness principles, helping him recognize triggering emotions and practice values-based spending. Both Sophia and David discovered that modern addictions are attempts to escape uncomfortable internal experiences. By developing willingness to experience these feelings without immediately escaping, they gained much more control over their behaviors. They didn't eliminate technology entirely, but learned to use it consciously and intentionally rather than compulsively. They used technology as a tool to enhance their lives rather than escape from them. The willingness approach to modern addictions is particularly important because these behaviors are so normalized. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's healthy. If technology is causing stress, interfering with relationships, or preventing presence in your life, it's worth examining. The same principles that work for traditional addictions work for modern ones. By developing awareness, practicing willingness, and creating supportive environments, you can regain control and use technology in ways that truly serve your well-being. Chapter 6. Sustaining change and living with freedom. As we reach the end of our journey together, I want to address the most important question. How do you maintain these changes over time and prevent slipping back into old patterns when life gets challenging? Let me share Rachel's story. She came to me struggling with smoking, emotional eating, and technology addiction. Using willingness techniques, Rachel made remarkable progress for 6 months. But then life hit hard. Her father was diagnosed with cancer, she went through a breakup and lost her job. Under this stress, her old patterns returned. Dr. Rodriguez, she said, I feel like I've failed. As soon as things got difficult, I went right back to my old ways. Rachel's experience is completely normal. Sustainable change isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral where you might revisit old patterns, but with higher awareness and better tools. The first thing I helped Rachel understand is that setbacks are not failures. They're information. Instead of viewing her relapse as evidence that change was impossible, we used it as data to create a more robust approach. Here are the key principles for sustaining change. First, expect and plan for setbacks. Think of willingness as a practice, like physical fitness. You don't get in shape once and never need to exercise again. The same is true for emotional fitness. Rachel and I developed a relapse prevention plan, identifying her triggers. Feeling overwhelmed, lonely, and out of control. We created specific strategies for each trigger. When overwhelmed, she would practice the STOP technique. When lonely, she would reach out to real people for connection. When feeling out of control, she would practice RAIN. Second, build your willingness muscle. Practice willingness in low-stakes situations so the skill is available during high-stakes moments. Rachel would practice sitting with the urge to check her phone while waiting in line, or tolerating weekend boredom instead of immediately seeking entertainment. Third, create environmental scaffolding. Design your environment to support your goals. Rachel removed cigarettes from her home, kept healthy snacks available, and created phone-free zones. She developed morning and evening routines that became anchors during chaotic times. Fourth, develop self-compassion. Resilience. When setbacks occur, your response determines whether you get back on track quickly or spiral into shame. Rachel learned to treat herself with the same kindness she'd offer a good friend, seeing setbacks as temporary detours rather than permanent failures. Fifth, stay connected to your values. Rachel regularly revisited why she wanted to change, creating a values vision board with pictures and quotes that inspired her. When motivation was low, she could reconnect with her bigger picture. Sixth, build a support system. Rachel joined support groups, found an accountability partner, and communicated her needs clearly to friends and family. Change is easier when you're not doing it alone. Seventh, celebrate progress and practice gratitude. Rachel kept a wins journal, recording daily victories, from choosing healthy snacks to having difficult conversations without reaching for her phone. 3 years later, Rachel has been smoke-free for over 2 years, has a healthy relationship with food, and uses technology as a tool rather than an escape. More importantly, she has developed confidence and self-efficacy. The biggest change, Rachel told me, isn't just that I don't smoke or overeat anymore. It's that I feel like I have choices. When difficult emotions come up, I have a toolkit of responses. I know that whatever life throws at me, I can handle it. This sense of agency is the ultimate goal of willingness. It's not about perfect behavior or never having cravings. It's about developing skills to navigate life's challenges without being controlled by impulses. Remember, willingness is not a destination, but a way of traveling. There will be smooth stretches and rough patches. That's all part of the journey. The mountain we're all climbing is becoming fully human, learning to experience the full range of emotions without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. When you can sit with discomfort without immediately escaping, when you can feel cravings without being controlled by them, you become truly free. You become free to pursue dreams without being held back by fear, to build meaningful relationships without needing approval, to take risks without being paralyzed by possible failure. This freedom isn't about never feeling uncomfortable. It's about having a different relationship with those experiences, knowing you can handle whatever arises while choosing actions based on what matters most. The secret to self-control is not more control, but less resistance. It's not about overpowering cravings, but making peace with them. When you approach cravings with curiosity instead of judgment, acceptance instead of resistance, compassion instead of criticism, they lose much of their power over you. Every moment offers a new opportunity to practice willingness, to choose your response rather than react automatically, to align actions with values rather than impulses. As you face the choices ahead, remember to bring caring and kindness to yourself. Change is a process, not perfection. Setbacks are information, not failures. You are not alone on this mountain. We're all climbing together, learning to be more fully human, discovering the freedom that comes from willingness. The path is before you. The choice is yours. And the mountain is waiting. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. Now go forward with confidence, knowing you have the tools and wisdom to create the life you truly want to live.